Welcome to the AEC Groundbreaking Growth podcast.
Hosted by Stambon S.
Welcome back to Groundbreaking Growth, where we explore the stories, trends, and strategies of next generation leaders in the AEC industry. I am your host, Emily, and I'm here with my co-host, Jen. Today, we have an incredible guest who brings a wealth of experience as both an engineer and educator.
Great. Yes, today we are joined by Sargon Ishaya, and he is the president of Pragmatic Professional Engineers. He is also an adjunct professor at San Jose State for over 20 years. And his story is really one of kind of resilience, entrepreneurship, growth, and purpose. And he's really built a successful business with thriving teams. So Sargon, we're definitely excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So we'd love to start with a little bit about your journey. If you'd be able to kind of walk us through your career in the AEC industry, how you got started, and then what led you to kind of start your own firm at Pragmatic.
Sure. I started in the AEC industry right out of school. I wanted to be a professor at a college. I really enjoyed university life, and I was at Stanford University, and once I got my master's degree, I was burned out, so I just looked for a job and found something at an air conditioning company, which I never thought I would end up doing, but I got into it, and little by little became more and more interested and started meeting people and realizing that it was a creative industry and it was really interesting. And so I began my journey working for a small company in the San Francisco Bay Area. And after, stopping at a couple of companies, I ended up at one firm for almost 15 years. And I thought I was going to retire there. But in the downturn in 2008, 2009, they were letting go of the higher salaried employees, and I was one of them. And so I had built some relationships while I was at that company. And when I was let go, I had several of the clients that I had served call me and say, hey, we'd like you to do work for us still. And so I started doing, you could call it side work, really, just doing contract work here and there. And I went to a couple of startups for the next, 3 years, a year and a half at each one. And I joke, I got a bunch of stock options and ended up with like a hat and a couple of shirts at the end of it all. Yeah. So
some turn out well, some don't. So
yeah, I know. So the second one that I was at, though, when they decided to fold up, it was actually a blessing because I had so many jobs on the side, quote unquote, that I had to devote full time, to the business. And shortly after that, I became even busier. And as you mentioned, I'm an adjunct professor. And so at about that time, I was 10, 12 years into teaching. I had never really hired people out of my class, but once I became that busy, I started to look at the opportunity to do that. The students, obviously, if you've been with a professor for a semester, you kind of can tell if there's a personality conflict. And so, the better students, I just asked them, hey, are you interested? And, for the most part, they were. And so just hired them on and had them help me. And, my first hire was 2015. And now we're up to almost 40 employees. So, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. And, I think back to my times at school and, um, you do develop good relationships with your professors and like you look to them towards mentors and whatnot. And I could only imagine how kind of proud and excited I would be if a professor, asked me, hey, like, I know you're getting ready to graduate, have really enjoyed working with you. Would you like to, come on board? So that's such a cool way to have started your business.
Yeah, just having someone see potential in you
Yeah.
and sort of tap you for an opportunity. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I know in one of our first calls, Sargon, you kind of explained to us that you had always thought about, as you were building your business and starting your business, you had that succession planning in mind. And I was wondering if you could kind of explain to our listeners kind of what that looked like for you and how that kind of like drove your leadership style and how you engaged with your team.
Sure. Yeah. The reason that I started the business was not just for myself. I also kind of thought this is an opportunity to right some of the things that I thought were wrong that I saw when I was an employee, and so I decided I wanted to make it be better than a better work environment than the ones that I had experienced. I wanted to draw on my few bad experiences. I generally had good employers, but there were just some things I didn't like. And so when I started the company, I decided it would be something that I wanted to last beyond my career. So, for example, I picked a generic name, Pragmatic Professional Engineers, rather than my name or my initials. And when I hired people, I hired them with the intent that they would take it over. So, for example, I showed them all the financials of the jobs that they worked on, and they would know whether it was profitable or not. I thought that would incent them to do a better job, and it was something that I didn't like. Again, when I was working as an engineer, I could never see the economics of the job and of the company, and so I thought that would be a wise thing to do, and that helped them build a business sense and understand that we're engineering. It's true, but we're serving a client. We're also serving our fellow employees by making a job profitable. I mean, this is part of the engineering process, and so I think that that was a key factor in the longer term vision, to have people that could become independent and could be like they own their own company, but they would be working for a company, and so they would take ownership of their projects, and it's worked out really well for us.
Good. Yeah, that's one thing I eventually went back and did an MBA later in my career. But even when I go back to my alma mater and talk to engineering students, I always say, like, engineering is a business, right? Everything you learn here, whether you're focused in engineering or nursing or something else, you're going to go out and be in a business somewhere someday. And even a minor in business or just some exposure to basic business principles, I think can go a long way. And especially if you have the opportunity to work for a firm that kind of opens up the financials on a project or on the company, that can be really exciting as well. So cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with that intent that you are growing them into leaders of the company, starting a business with succession planning in mind, which I think is very unique in my experience. So, Sargon, I love how intentional you are about developing these leaders as you go. Like we just talked about, they're leaders, they're not just employees. And you mentioned that everyone is different. Some embrace leadership, others lean more technical, and that's okay too. How do you meet your team where they are? How do you help them grow?
The way that I found to help them grow is you give them a little bit more until you realize that it's enough and they need a break or they need to stay at a certain place. So, for example, we have had some people where I told them, hey, I think you're at a spot where you can start to manage people. And they just decided, they kind of avoided that. They decided, they told me, I really don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable. And I was like, I think you're ready, but I don't want to do this until you agree. And so let's just keep you on a team as a team member. And when you're ready to be a team leader, you tell me. And then obviously every year at their annual review, we talk about this again. And sometimes they decide, that they do want to stay where they're at, which is totally fine. The others, though, little by little, you challenge them to start leading a team or start, the first step would be to just take on a project and do the whole thing on their own, interfacing with the client, making sure that it's profitable. And then little by little, you give them more, you give them a team. And if they keep excelling and they keep wanting more, then, but I would give them more responsibilities and maybe give them a couple of teams to run and give them their own client, tell them that, this was my client, these are my friends, but I go and introduce them and say, hey, this is going to be your sales executive for our company. He's going to be the face. And so this person will now take my place and then they excel with that as well. And once they've excelled there, this person could run or be a member that runs the company. So it's kind of a strategy of continually giving people more challenges and interfacing with them to make sure that they embrace it. And then once they do and they're successful, then you can give them the next challenge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that exposure, I think, is so key because oftentimes as a mid-career or early career professional, you don't know what you may be interested in, right? You may kind of have some natural leadership tendencies, but to your point, once you kind of increase or stretch or their comfort zone, they may find that it's not something they're comfortable with, or maybe not a path they want to pursue. So that constant kind of checking in to make sure that that's part of the growth path they see for themselves and want for themselves. Mm-hmm. And question kind of a little off topic, you being a professor, Sargon, have you seen any large changes kind of in your student body as far as skill sets go, right? I'm thinking around kind of technology and how it's implemented in the industry, some of those softer skills, so engaging with other individuals and kind of working through difficult conversations. Do you see any of those changes more broadly just in the student body or graduating classes?
Yeah, there's a few things that have evolved, you might say. When I was I'll give you an analogy. When I was 16, everybody in high school on their birthday got their driver's license. And I've noticed that today that's not necessarily the case. Some people don't drive until they're 18. And the same thing can be said with the engineers. When I was 2 years out of school, you had to have 2 years of experience in order to get become a registered professional engineer, to take the test. And I did it on the 2-year anniversary. And all of not all, but a lot of the friends that I had graduated with at my university were at the testing center. And we were kind of reminiscing, and it was interesting that we all were doing it on our anniversary. But today I have to incent the engineers to get their degree, so I do that with financially. There's a few ways to motivate people, and money is one of them. So I basically tell them that, and I'm honest with them that this is good for your career. It's going to cost me, as the majority company owner, more money to pay you your salary if you get this registered engineering degree, license. But you need it. It's good for you. It's good for your career. long term. And so I want you to do this because it's important. And again, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was getting a license, you wouldn't have to incent the engineers to do that. They would do that on their own. And now it's kind of like you have to give them a nudge.
That kind of makes me think of another comment you made in our initial conversation. Just the idea that, right, our engagement with an employer, right, is about money, right? In the end, right? It's about kind of our salaries, and hopefully we are working so that we can live a great life outside of work. And why kind of financial literacy and that financial education is so important. Can you speak to how you kind of some of your methods in trying to educate staff, even beyond just business financials, but kind of personal life financials?
Yeah, sure. This goes back to some of the things that I wished I would have had when I was younger, maybe a mentor advising me on finances. And now that I've made a lot of mistakes, I feel like I have more knowledge to impart. So, yeah, I do believe that the relationship, the reason that I have the relationship with the employees is a money relationship. I love them for the most part, and if we were neighbors, I would invite them over and we would hang out, and I'd love to go do things with them. But the primary reason that we have a relationship is because I asked them to spend 40 hours a week or so working, doing engineering for me, and so that I can earn money, and then in turn I give them the money. So since our relationship is a relationship of them coming to me to earn money, I feel like it's my responsibility to give them more than just a salary, but also to give them some wisdom if I can. For example, becoming a registered professional engineer, it costs me more money. It would be, I can give you an example. One time, for a very short season of my career, I was asked to be the interim engineering manager at a company, and I noticed that they had no reimbursement program or incentives to help people network in the local engineering societies or to get their PE license. And so I went to the upper management and I said, I know I'm just the interim engineering manager, but have you ever thought about putting these incentives in place so that these guys can start to network, these guys and girls can start to network and start to build their careers? And the answer they gave me was, well, if we do that, they'll leave. And I thought that was so odd to me, like, wait a minute. I'm not that way. I really want them to be successful. I want them to be wealthy. I hope that it's with the company that I have and that they're employed at. But if it's not, that's totally okay. And I've had people that have left for what they thought was bigger and better. And, I shook their hand, God bless you. If you ever want to come back, come back. I really like you. And I've kept in contact with those people. And so I think that if you, treat people the way that you want to be treated, in the end, it'll always be better. And by bringing in the money into the equation, which is why we have that relationship, you try to help them understand how writing off mortgage interest and itemizing your deductions is a great advantage. So I do bring in real estate professionals to give them seminars on home buying. And I also talk to them about, like if they're not able to buy a home, maybe where to invest their money. So like recently, inflation's been really high. I've been telling them not to keep their money in the bank if they have any extra savings. And it's funny because about a year and a half or 2 years ago, I told them to buy gold and Bitcoin. And now I can say, oh, look how smart I was, I hope they did that. I obviously don't check unless they tell me, but yeah, it's important that that I try to make them wealthy and rich because that's really going to set them up in the arc of their life to be more successful.
And likely is a good overall business strategy, right? oftentimes when we think about succession planning and talk internally in our teams here, right, it's a closed loop system to some extent, like what you bonus and pay out and how financially independent and secure your employees are, that's the money that they can use to buy into your company then. So it's that whole succession kind of model and planning in mind. So yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they know that you're on their side, I think that also helps with retainage. When they know that, okay, maybe I'm not driving a Ferrari right now, but you know what? This guy's on my side. He wants me to be wealthier. So it just helps that they know that that I'm thinking of them, I believe.
Yeah, and I think even though we're talking about money and financial transactions and things, it is very much that people first. And it seems like within your approach to business and within your approach to developing individuals as leaders, there's also that care for the individual as a person and helping them be the best that they can be, regardless of if that means they might leave the company or, whatever that may be. But to you, it seems like you're really interested in making your employees be the best individuals that they can be. And I think that is pretty profound as a leader. So great.
It doesn't cost anything extra to be nice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things you've also mentioned is really your approach to your company as something you wish you had along the way and something you wish you had as that next generation leader. We always close with groundbreaking growth with the question of what is one piece of advice you would give to that next generation of leaders in the AEC industry?
So for the next generation, I would just give the advice of make sure that you are, following the golden rule, treating others the way that you would want to be treated. So put yourself in the position of your client. They want a well-engineered set of documents that is not too expensive. It's value engineered properly. Think of your boss. What do they need? They need a good package of drawings, something that's easy for them to publish, something that's been reviewed and it's correct, and they're not going to bleed all over it. And what do your people who are under you, what do they need? And they need mentorship, and they need guidance. They need to be challenged so that they feel like they're growing. So yeah, basically the golden rule applies to all outside customers, inside customers, and people who are under you. If you can remember that, treat people the way you would want to be treated, I think it goes a long way in an engineering, in any career, but in this case, engineering.
Yeah, definitely agree there. It's kind of doing the fundamentals well, right? And treating people, to your point, the way they would want to be treated. So yeah, definitely appreciate you sharing your story, Sargon. Really just from that intention of setting up your business with succession in mind, growing leaders and ensuring that you have kind of high performing teams. You definitely have a great story and want to thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yes. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Groundbreaking Growth. If you enjoyed today's conversation, which I am sure you did, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. And we'll see you all next time.